My name is John Ferrara. I'm a two-time entrepreneur, and I want to introduce my dear friend, Brian Solis. Brian Solis actually helped me build Goldmine back in the day, which was Outlook and Salesforce before either existed. So he actually has been a storyteller in my life for more years than either of us will want to talk about.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about you, Brian. You're an analyst at Altimeter, and you're an award-winning author, blogger, writer, keynote speaker. So they say that you're a leading digital anthropologist and futurist. I love that because I really believe that by understanding the past, you can predict the future. So I love the fact that they have that word for you, and that one of you are the greatest digital analysts of our time. So today, we're here to talk about your new book, which we have right over here. I'm just going to hand you one.
Oh yeah, probably.
But before we talk about your new book, tell us who you are, what you do, why do you do it, what gets you up each morning and keeps you up at night?
My name is Brian Solis. I'm a digital analyst. My job is to study disruptive technology and its impact on business. I'm also a digital anthropologist, so I study its impact on society, on individuals, on cultures, norms, behaviors, values, all of those things. And the reason why I do those two together is so that I can make sense, because as we all know, technology, there was a time where you could actually just study technology and keep up with it, but now it's moving so quickly. There's, I think, 30 disruptive technologies that are all simultaneously happening right now. It's just too much to keep up with. So studying the effects on markets and people is a lot slower and also a little bit more meaningful in my world. It's actually what gets me up in the morning, is trying to make sense of this as an analyst, as an anthropologist, as a father, really trying to be relevant in their lives as their lives are growing up so different. They're going to have to learn analog, and I had to learn digital. And what keeps me up at night is all of this too. There's too much that I want to study. There's too much that I want to do, and I can't scale myself. And so having to focus is where I am today, and why I get out of bed now is to find some way to share this message about life scaling with people who will listen. And it's an uphill battle, because a lot of people still don't know that they need the book and that they have an issue, and the only reason I figured it out is because I hit a wall. I published a lot of research, but I couldn't write my next book, and this wasn't the book I set out to write. And so I only got here because I failed pretty spectacularly. And by that was understanding, one, I couldn't do the book. I couldn't get past the proposal stage, but also because I didn't know who I was. I just became everything that I was doing, my research, my work, the speaking, the traveling, the phone, this, that, keeping up with everything digital. So I lost myself along the way. And so what this became was a journey back to getting to know who I was and learning how to balance the irony of technology impacting my life in order to make it much more useful. So hopefully that answered the question.
You have a new book out, and I was going to ask you to tell us about it, what inspired you to write it, and what the key takeaways are. You told us what inspired you to write it, and I think we're all feeling that today. I mean, just look how people walk around the world today, and that they feed these things for the little red lights, because we're all so desperate to be seen, heard, wanted, and loved. I think that's the core of humanity, and I think the more we share content to build our network, to build our brand, we're actually getting more disconnected. And I think that's what your book is about, is finding the humanness in ourselves and connecting that with others. But I'm gonna let you talk about it briefly. Tell us what inspired you to write the book and what the key takeaways are.
So when I realized that I couldn't write my next book, I had to do a lot of soul searching, because my natural reaction was to blame writer's block, and then also just the pressures of trying to keep up with all of the writing. But it turns out that the irony of it all was, as an analyst who studies technology, I was disrupted by the technology that I studied. And the only reason that I figured that out was because of the soul searching and the reflection of just trying to get to the heart of the matter, which was, why aren't we talking about technology's effects on us? As an anthropologist, I studied its effects on other people. So I already was well aware of things like self-esteem, depression, loneliness, but it's one of those things, is that there's a famous quote that we all talk of change, but we never talk of changing ourselves. So it was very easy to look at other people. When I turned the lens on myself, it was life-changing, is probably the only way that I could describe it. And what I first started to do was understand how technology is wired, specifically from a design perspective, to manipulate why we look at the phone so much, why we feel the constant need to do that, what it does to our brains, what it does chemically to our bodies. It's a lot like drugs, cocaine, you name it. So your body literally becomes dependent on the cycle, but it also rewires your brain out of things like depth and flow and creativity and artistry and true self-expression, because we're giving the tools and the crutches to look amazing, to have these filters, to whatever it is that we want to do, to be creative. We have places all around the city, all around this conference, that allow us to take Instagrammable pictures in front of it and makes us look at me. So I studied all of that stuff to really get to the heart of the matter, and what I found was horrifying. And as a father, I then now started to look at my daughters differently and what's happening when they look at YouTube, for example. So I needed a solution. I still had to write the book, and so I just shared on stage the honest answers. I Googled solutions to see what I could find, and it was all the same thing: mindfulness, meditation, get the Calm app or Headspace, get back to nature, go to Digital Detox, go to Burning Man, go to the Essel Institute. So a lot of really good things, but not solving the root cause of the problem, because we haven't really exposed, other than the work of Tristan Harris, who exposed all of the design secrets of why this stuff is what it is. There are no real solutions for this. And so that was the inspiration, was I needed the book, and it didn't exist. I needed to figure everything out and find myself again and give myself not only permission, but also a path of which I can find my way out of it. And I think somewhere in the first part of the book, I think it says, I don't know how to get out of this, but by the time you turn the pages, it's me figuring it out and bringing that story back to you. So I didn't set out as an expert. I didn't see this as a book on my horizon. I just honestly needed to figure out my life. And then when I finished, it was 105,000 words that I wrote. This is only 55, so we cut out essentially another book, because I didn't want to stop writing. The process was so beautiful, the process was so enlightening, so enriching, that I didn't want it to stop. In fact, I'm kind of going through withdrawals. I want to keep going, and so now I've made it my life purpose, is to make sure that not just getting the book in people's hands, but I'm turning the book into a whole series of programs for life coaches and for teachers, so that they can help their students, so that they can help their colleagues, their friends, their loved ones get back to things that matter at a very human level, like values, purpose, vision, why we are on Earth.
You know, Brian, we sing from the same hymn book in so many ways. I just got back from a workshop at Essel on mindfulness and meditation, and I would love to see this in a workshop, because I think we all feel this, right? We're all feeling overconnected, distracted, phone, right? And we all need a way to get out of this hamster wheel. Yeah. Why has the digital transformation reached eye roll status? Has it become ubiquitous?
Yeah, so digital transformation is one of my main fields of study, and one of the reasons why I got into it was because of the great work done by Capgemini originally. They were looking at it from an IT or a CIO perspective on how technology was modernizing businesses, essentially moving to the cloud, moving to mobile, getting more people on collaboration platforms. The reason why I started studying it and why I think it's reached eye roll status is because now there's the digital transformation of ... You name it, everybody's talking about digital transformation. But like in my work here, I study the humanity of it. So I wanted to bring the human side of the story to digital transformation, which is if you give digital transformation a purpose. So for example, in some of the more elite organizations, their purpose is understanding how the customer is different, How is the customer going through the journey? How is technology reshaping that journey? And then pointing digital transformation as a means of modernizing the journey to be much more intuitive, much more efficient, much more convenient, much more just thoughtless, really, just making it part of their life. So that is one of the more beautiful reasons why I study it, why I don't think it's, even though it's reached eye roll status, the humanity of it is actually more important than it's ever been. Digital transformation can help businesses not only modernize, but become much more relevant. And so the other reason that I study it as well is to bring that message back to the C-suite of there is a human story to your market, to your employee base. They're changing and you're not. And so we need to not only modernize business from a technology standpoint, but also from how we engage people, why we come to work, and how we work.
You know, Brian, when you start talking about marketing, I think of it as bombers flying over the battlefield. And market automation are like bombers that are dropping bombs at a higher level, bombing us all, right? But it's never gonna change, it's never gonna win our hearts. And I think to win hearts, companies need to become more human and empower their customer-facing business team members to engage in a human way, to humanize, to build the company brand, and then to humanize that brand by empowering the team members to build their brands and then engage their constituency in a relevant and authentic way. I think that's where we need to get to, and I think that's, when you're talking about what you're talking about, that's kind of what resonated with me. How can marketers start unmarketing themselves out of the lost art of human connection?
The problem with marketing is the word marketing. I don't think any of us say marketers and just find our hearts melting. A lot of it is just because the platform itself has been about selling, and then the technology has been about scaling how we sell. One of the things that inspired me most about social media, I wrote in 2007 what I called the Social Media Manifesto. It was a manifesto that I wrote for businesses to say, this is a gift. This is not another platform where we just start broadcasting messages to everybody, yet that's what it's become, but the manifesto said it's a human network. We have the ability to talk, but we also have the ability to listen. And the more we listen, the more we can learn. That was the main mission of all of this, is that the humanity of technology and marketing is missing in a lot of ways, but it's also an opportunity, and it still is an opportunity, where you don't have to market. If you know what your customer is looking for example, or your employee, or whoever your audience is, they live life a certain way. If you let that touch you, and you let that inspire how you're going to bring value to them, then that actually changes the game from marketing to experience. And I think that experience is a very emotional thing, right? Experience is an emotional reaction to a moment, and if it's great or if it's horrible, it becomes a memory. And so we have the power to shape those experiences in ways that could become profound memories for people, and that becomes a whole different level of branding and a whole different level of marketing. When you can connect at an empathetic level because you listened and you learned and you delivered value to somebody, that's at the heart of any relationship, mutual value.
Yeah. What you just talked about reminded me of shopping at Nordstrom's. I'm going to tell you why. Because when I walk into Nordstrom's, I immediately feel comfortable. But more importantly, after the purchase, have you ever noticed this? They take the bag, they walk around the counter, and they hand it to you.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is they're making a human connection and completing the journey. And I think that sort of speaks to what you just talked about in humanizing that engagement. What are some of your favorite techniques to get into flow and creativity?
So I just asked what are some of the favorite techniques to get into flow and creativity, and I'll be honest with you, I thought I had the answer, which is probably why I failed in delivering the book proposal. I had to learn how to get back into flow. Flow is a deep state of mindfulness or presence of which you lose yourself to whatever it is that is in that moment. So the flow is an Olympic athlete. When they're swimming and they're getting that gold medal, they are in the flow. When I'm writing now or when I'm creating, I am artfully in the flow. But I had to build up the prerequisite skills to allow myself to get there. So the Pomodoro technique is something I talk about all the time. Just focus in 25-minute bursts, distraction free, and let yourself build the muscle and also the ability to kind of focus, single task. Don't multitask. But then from there, I started playing with vinyl. So every side of a record is also about 25 minutes long, but the sensation of pulling the album out of the sleeve, the smell, the tactile sensation of placing the grooves on a table and then lifting that needle so carefully and slowly and letting it rest and hearing that crackling, it became sort of a sensory experience that got me in the mindset before the mindset. So those things, I started to build my creativity and allow myself to get into the flow, and I still struggle with it, so I'm not gonna lie, because I still live a digital life, but I'm getting better at it because I'm intentionally trying to get better at it.
I love that we share vinyl. I still have my records from when I was 10 years old all the way to now.
That's fantastic.
And my kids have learned to love vinyl, and we go out to my vinyl room and we play music together, and I love that they love my music. It's funny how kids today love the music from the 70s.
It's better on vinyl.
Yes, it's better on vinyl. So what's the most unconventional thing you've done or most difficult decision you've made to change your life's path that might surprise some of the people here?
You know, just since I'm being completely transparent and honest, I don't read anything in my own industry. That's probably the worst thing to admit to. But I instead will read, like for example, I just read a book by Ralph Steadman, who was the illustrator for
Fear and Loathing.
Yeah, Fear and Loathing. Basically, he's just a brilliant artist, and to hear his take on the whole rise of gonzo journalism and how he visually told those stories was just fascinating. I read Blaise Pascal. I go to museums. I listen to vinyl. I read lyrics. I need to be inspired by art if I hope to produce art. If I start reading everybody's work, I start sounding like everybody else, and I put myself in a box that it becomes very difficult to break out of. But when there is no box, you can create something that's going to feel fresh. Even if it sucks, it's going to be different and unique.
Yeah. I study history because I believe if you understand the past, you better understand, history and geography. If you understand the past and people, right, you can better understand the present and actually predict the future. So here's my final question for you. What's next for Brian Solis?
What's next for me is turning this book into a platform, because I realize that I still have a day job, I still want to be very present in my family's life. So I'm intentionally making a decision to not be the face behind the movement. So I'm turning the movement into programs for life coaches and for teachers. So we're going to have certification programs. They're going to get all the materials for themselves and then also for their colleagues, students, whoever it is, their kids, because I want to scale the message through them, because they're on the front lines. That's what's next for me. I'm still studying everything else that I still have to study, but I'm building this into a platform, and then after that, I'm going to go back to the book that I failed on writing, and I feel like I can bring that back, but things happen for a reason, and that next book is actually going to be under this brand. So it's going to be something scale, but still related to that personal transformation of being greater in whatever it is that you want to do.
Well, I bet there's people listening today, right now, who would want to become your teachers, apostles, to out and spread the gospel. And so with that, would you mind signing the first 20 people in line who want to get a free book from you?
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. Thank you for standing.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you for getting books, John. I appreciate it.